When Alfred Stieglitz comments on the steerage, he doesn't really focus on what you might think. Maybe when we look at this photo today, we're looking at it through the lens of presentism. It's a crowded scene after all, divided by a bright bridge with looping chains dividing the scene between the upper deck and the lower. Those below appear to have meager belongings. There's clothing hanging up to dry, people sitting down and looking anxious. But just one deck above, you have a different scene. You've got men dressed in nice traveling gear, wearing hats, seemingly much better off than those just below them. That to me is the first impression, the divide between those above and those below. The dominance of those wearing white or lighter colored clothes below and others almost entirely in dark clothing up above. It seems to be a statement on classism and how different the experience of travel was for some people. Many think this was a picture of a ship arriving to America where many would be turned around and not allowed to immigrate over. However, this is actually a photo of a ship traveling away from America and arriving in Germany. It was shot in 1907 and became one of the greatest photographs of all time because it captured in a single frame both the embodiment of an era and the move towards modern photography. After Alfred Stieglitz closed his art gallery for the summer and his daughter finished school, he gathered his family for an excursion to Europe. They departed the U.S. for Paris on May 14, 1907, aboard the first-class quarters of the fashionable Kaiser Wilhelm II. On the third day of the cruise, Stieglitz said he couldn't take it anymore and had to get away from the company and confinements of his situation. He leapt out into the ship as far forward on the deck as he could. He found himself alone, standing at the end of the deck. He saw men, women, and children on the lower deck of what was called the steerage, the lowest possible category of long-distance steamer travel reserved for the very poor, usually immigrants seeking a new life. There he saw a narrow stairway leading up the upper deck and then a small deck at the bow of the steamer. To the left was an inclining funnel, and from the upper steerage there was the fastened bridge, freshly painted and glistening in the sun and untouched by anyone. A young man looking over the deck and wearing a white straw hat caught his attention. Stieglitz was caught by the roundness of it. He became fascinated by the shapes he was seeing. The looping and drooping chains, the triangle pattern of the bow jutting out between the decks. He also noticed how there were only men on the upper deck, but there were men, women, and children on the lower deck. He felt a compulsion to go join them. When he wrote an essay about this photo some 35 years later, he described how the scene summed up his career's mission to elevate photography to the status of fine art by engaging the same dialogues around abstraction that preoccupied European avant-garde painters. Many people who examine the photo focus on the details between the classes of people and how the dividing bridge between them speaks to some sort of political statement, but Stieglitz saw things differently. Quote, "A round straw hat, the funnel leading out, the stairway leaning right, the white drawbridge with its railings made of circular chains, white suspenders crossing on the back of a man in the steerage below, round shapes of iron machinery, a mast cutting into the sky making triangular shapes," he said. "I stood spellbound for a while, looking and looking. Could I photograph what I felt, looking and still looking? I saw shapes related to each other. I saw a picture of shapes and underlying that the feeling I had about life." Stieglitz raced back to the main stairway of the steamer to his cabin so he could retrieve his camera, a Graflex. When he got back to the spot he was just at, he was hoping everyone would still be there, and they were. The man in the straw hat hadn't moved. The man in the white suspenders was still there. The woman with the child on her lap was still there, sitting on the floor. It's like they had waited for him. So for Stieglitz, he was more interested in the shapes and special relations. As it would turn out, over time he would be criticized for overlooking these subjects in the photo. The steerage is not just about abstract interpretation, but also conveys a message. Although some of the passengers seen in the photo might have been turned back from America for not meeting financial or health requirements, it is more likely that most of them were various artisans who worked in the construction trade at that time. Back then, workers such as cabinet makers, woodworkers, marble and stone workers were all granted 2-year temporary visas to complete jobs and then returned home when their work was complete. Upon traveling to Paris, nearly a week after taking the picture, Stieglitz had the photographic plate developed at a fellow photographer's personal darkroom. He offered to pay the photographer for the use of his darkroom, but the photographer told him, "I know who you are. It's an honor to have you in my darkroom." Alfred Stieglitz was a major force in the promotion and elevation of photography as a fine art in America in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The Steerage is considered Stieglitz's signature work and was first published in 1911 within an issue of Camera Work. While he was sympathetic to the plight of immigrants, Stieglitz was opposed to admitting the uneducated and marginal into the U.S. Despite his claims of sentiment for the downtrodden, his views may be the reason why he has avoided addressing the subject of the steerage as a political statement and instead chooses to argue for its place as a benchmark for the value of photography as fine art.